Top of the day to you, Arnie.
Scott, I'm very excited about our show today. One of my favorite organizations we're going to be profiling, Missoula Children's Theater, which offers more live productions than any production company in the world. And today we have Mike McGill, the executive director, on. But it led me to think this morning on the way over to the studio about performing and being in front of live audiences. When you were growing up in your career, have you ever performed on the stage?
No.
Were you a tree in a high school production or anything?
I'm sure I was, but nothing memorable.
Well, I have a story to tell you. That's a nice lead into this. I had never been in anything. I was never the tree in the forest in a high school production. I know it's shocking to believe, but quite shy as a young man growing up.
No way.
And in my 20s, I was dating a woman who was very much into the theater. And I went down to a regional theater in the Cincinnati area where she was trying out to be in a production of a musical comedy called Show Me Where the Good Times Are, which was based on Moliere's Imaginary Invalid. It had run off of Broadway, and they were going to do a production of it in regional theater. And she asked me to come down and give her moral support. And to make a long story short, I got cast in the show instead of her.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't even trying out for the show. The director asked me to come out of the audience to stand on the stage to help them with some blocking. And pretty soon, it was a woman director. She asked me to read some lines. And pretty soon, I was in the production in one of the male lead roles.
Oh, boy.
In this show. And as you know, I don't sing or dance. So it was an unusual casting by the director. But we had it was a short run, and we got good reviews, and I personally got good reviews in the show, and it was my one time being on the stage, which was really, in many ways, a transformative experience.
Why? What happened?
Because standing in front of an audience, memorizing lines,
right,
trying to be another character, seeing I could see why performers perform like the Rolling Stone into the 70s and 80s. Having people applaud you or laugh at you or respond to you is very stimulating.
An adrenaline rush.
And so the goal, the objective of the Missoula Children's Theater of giving children the opportunity to have that experience at an early age is very laudable. And I'm excited to talk to Mike about all the activities they're involved in.
And where they are.
And they're all over the world.
They're all over the world. This is kind of incredible.
Out of Missoula, Montana.
MCT. And I also, I read this, Arnie, before, too, doing some preparation for today's conversation. MCT also stands for Missoula Community Theater.
Right. And they do.
So I think they've expanded kind of their, I don't know how long that's been in play, but we'll find out from Mike.
The quality of the performances here, particularly because you have this, well-established organization, and you have the university's, theater and dance school that feeds into it. We have very high-quality entertainment for a community this size.
I'm looking forward to speaking to Mike. We will be back after this with Mike McGill.
Right.
So, we got Michael here. We're in the studio right now. We're rolling. He's talking about playing Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof at MCD. No, he's talking about Oliver.
Right.
When was that?
That was back in 1977, and I got a call from the music director who said, we need a baritone to sing this little part. It won't take any time. We talk about it's taken me like 38 years now. But I sang like 3 notes 3 times in that show, but I got pretty hooked on the whole community theater thing with MCT.
And you were mentioning J.K. Simmons was in it. Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons.
That's right. J.K. and I went to school together. And he happened to be the knife grinder in that show. It was crazy, though.
He was the knife grinder?
Right.
So
now he's selling insurance.
What most people know as Missoula Children's Theater is also Missoula Community Theater.
That's right. We're the parent organization is just MCT Inc., and underneath that there's these 2 branches, if you will. We started out as a children's theater back about 1970, and then in 77 we added the community theater segment to that. But since then, when I actually started working for MCT in 1981, we only had a few tours, and it was really a small company. But now it's grown to be the largest touring children's theater in the world.
And what does that mean? How many performances do you put on?
Well, the tour itself averages somewhere around 1,100 different residencies a year. And
That's incredible.
Each of those residencies has a couple of performances. So we're right up there with, oh man, I don't know. That's a lot of shows.
I don't know if anybody matches that.
Well, that involves, we put 65,000 children in costumes every year just on the road. This is not even Missoula.
So
That's incredible.
For our listeners, explain what happens when a tour comes to town. What's the whole process? Because I find it really fascinating.
Or what?
Or goes to town.
Or goes to a town.
Yeah.
Well, when we pull into a town, we have those little red trucks. You know, sometimes I hear, why do you need so many little red trucks out there? They're all parked in the parking lot.
Right.
It's because we go to all 50 states. We need a delivery system to go to all these places.
Wow.
So when we pull into town, the first thing we do is we meet with the presenter, and that's the person that has contracted with us to come to that town. And the first official act is on Monday. We have an audition in which we walk into a gymnasium or an auditorium or wherever that is, and no matter if that's 250 kids or 400 kids or 50 kids, we need to cast approximately 60 children in a production in 2 hours.
Are you kidding me?
It's probably the hardest thing we do. It really is.
And you're usually going to some place where there's no live theater at all.
Well, not necessarily, but we do pride ourselves in being access. You know, we go places. Barrow, Alaska does not have a huge ability or access to a lot of things, but we can go there. That's part of the beauty of what MCT does.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so what we end up doing during that week is 4 hours a day, normally after school, until at the end of the week it culminates in an hour-long musical in which 50, 60 local children play the leads.
And who came up with this concept?
Oh, that's a good question. Jim Caron was our founder, along with Don Collins. But I always credit Jim for having that light bulb go off. We were doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in Missoula for the community. It was more for the children that would come to the show. But there were 7 dwarves that were little people, right? They were little children that were cast as those dwarves. And Miles City happened to say, you know, we'd really like to have that show come to our town.
Mm.
And Jim was like, I'm not going to travel across the state on winter roads with 7 young people. I think, what if we went there early and cast those 7 kids from Miles City? And so that was their plan. And so when he finally went over there to do some auditions and casting, the gym was full of kids that wanted to be those seven characters.
How do you advance? How do you guys advance a town? Does the presenter basically say, "Hey, they're doing all the communication with the local community before you get there, so that when you're there, you're ready to do auditions"?
It really is one of those things where it's a combination of the town and MCT.
I see.
We supply what they don't have; they supply what we don't have. Right?
Sure.
So what they're doing is they're putting up the posters for the auditions. They're selling tickets to the show because that's their deal. That's not our deal.
You give them the tools to do that.
Right.
And when the little red van arrives, how many staff are in it?
Just 2.
Just 2 people.
Just like the director and
and one of the actors, one of the major supporting roles. So that you have a person on the stage with them, you know, making sure that it's everything goes smoothly.
Are you bringing scenery with you in the van?
We bring, we like to say we bring everything except just add kids. It's kind of like just add water.
Just add water, just add kids.
How far in advance does a presenter need to book?
Oftentimes, we book about a year in advance, a year to a year and a half in advance.
I was going to say you need to, right?
And you do international productions as well.
We do international productions. Right now, for instance, we have 4 teams out there in the world, some in Japan, some in Europe.
When you're in foreign countries, you do it in foreign language?
No, actually, it's used in an interesting way. Like, for instance, in Japan, they want to use it to increase their understanding of English and use it conversationally.
Huh.
And do you tailor the show? And if you're going to a foreign language country, do you use something with less dialogue than more dialogue usually?
No, not really. We use the full-blown show. It takes longer to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to send somebody just for a couple of days to Japan.
Right.
How long does the production stay in town? Is it over a weekend or is it longer than that?
It's 1 full week. So
full week, got it.
We start working with the kids on Monday, and oftentimes the shows are on that next Saturday.
So it's 1 day of shows?
1 day. Two shows, 1 day.
2 shows in 1 day?
It might be on Friday night, too.
It's incredible. So they may do a third performance.
Or they might do a Friday night and a Saturday afternoon. That's really up
just
to
two
the town.
I see.
Yeah. We always feel like it's really a good idea to do 2 shows, because if you just do 1 show, you've worked way too hard for that.
This is, in thinking about this, do these kids know that can they pronounce Missoula? Like when they see it?
Oh.
Do they call it Missoula or MCT?
They call it Missoula. Missoula's coming to town. That's what they say. And oftentimes they don't even know that is a city.
Right.
Arnie,
this is like the Music Man. This is like Robert Preston coming into town.
Has there ever been any type of documentary done on MCT?
There has. There's a documentary that was done in 2009, I think it is, and it was called The Little Red Truck, and it was done by Tree and Sky Media, and we still have some copies of that. It won a bunch of awards as far as family entertainment.
So what titles?
That's great.
What titles do you perform?
Well, they're fairy tales for the most part. Some of them are classics like Treasure Island, but there's also Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There's Cinderella. I just wrote one last year on Hercules.
Oh, cool. That's popular. Did you do Jack and the Beanstalk?
We do Jack and the Beanstalk. We have a lot of titles out there.
Let me flip for a minute to the Missoula Community Theater. How, that's another arm, and that produces what?
That produces Broadway-style plays that we rent from Broadway, and then we use local talent in order to put those shows together. And I got to tell you that Missoula is a special place.
Yeah, it is.
Because people walk in off the street and you go, where did you come from?
They can sing, they can dance, they can act. You
could do this anywhere. And I really have been blessed to be able to direct and work with those people in Missoula because it's very often that I find myself saying, I don't think that this company would have been such a thriving company if it didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
For example, I don't know if you were even in Missoula at the time, but Jim Caron, who's the founder, played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh, he did.
And I've seen many productions of Fiddler on the Roof, and he compared with any
here
Tevye,
in town.
Right here in town. He was amazing. He
great
kind of
actor.
looked like him anyway to begin with.
He has a great style.
He got the inflections and he got
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would think you were on Broadway.
That's incredible.
So
that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know. When I first came here, I first moved here about 22 years ago, and I was in town, and Fiddler on the Roof, local production. I was almost didn't go, and then somebody said, "No, you got to go see it. He's really." And I went to see it, and it was as good as any Broadway production.
I have a question for you, Arnie, because I'm wondering, did your folks take you to see Broadway plays? Because we both grew up in the tri-state area.
I don't want to date myself, but I've seen
Hello, Dolly?
Well, no, I've seen Fiddler. I saw Fiddler on the Roof with, the original cast was Zero Mostel. I saw Funny Girl with Barbra Streisand.
Yeah.
I saw My Fair Lady with Rex Harris. I mean, I've seen. I mean, we were drawn to it. From the time I was a little boy, we would always go see Broadway shows.
My parents did the same thing. They took us into the theater. We were lucky, but now I'm realizing how lucky we were. That's what this enables families to do
when I was
in those smaller communities.
Just one little aside. When I was a small boy, I saw Camelot with Richard Burton, and I thought he was really the king. I said, how'd they get this king to be in this play? Because his voice was just so
was it booming?
Kingly, so magnetic.
Michael, furnish us with some details. Where were you born? How long have you been in Missoula? How long have you been working with MCT?
Okay, well, I was born down in Hamilton, and I grew up in Stevensville, and went to high school there, graduated from there, went to the University of Montana, and while I was at the University of Montana is where my association with MCT started. I would help them build sets. I would help them on stage. I was in the music program, so a lot of the people I knew were active in it. I became more active in it after I got out of school and found that I really, really believed in the mission of this company, which was the development of life skills in children through participation in the performing arts. It's not about making little actors and actresses. It's about giving kids the confidence to go ahead and do other things.
Sure.
I tell you what, that feedback loop that I was telling you about, which is the applause that you get when you accomplish something on stage, that is powerful. And that makes a young person actually sit up and take notice, and they go, I did something.
And it's his own community applauding him. It's people, his neighbors and friends.
Yeah.
Right.
And all
exactly.
of that. That's very exciting.
If you get an A on a math test, that's great. But everybody in town doesn't know it. You know, you do something
personal.
like this,
Right.
everybody knows. And you'll go through the grocery store line, and the checkout person will say, hey, I saw you in the show, and you were great. They get that kind of feedback. That's like medicine.
You know, in some towns, like, are you being presented by a church, a religious group, or is it the theater group within a town?
Or a school.
It's actually across the board. It can be a service organization. It can be the school itself, the PTA. It just is across the board.
Is there anybody that you wouldn't let present one of our shows, one of your shows?
I've never run into anybody that I thought was doing it for the wrong reasons or something like that.
I'm just curious. Is
The
that
Ku
like,
Klux Klan presenting.
you know what I'm thinking, though?
I know what you're thinking.
Someone trying to co-op a good situation by trying to soften their edges by bringing something to town that's...
Yeah, I would consider that very heavily. Yeah.
Oh, God. I could only, you know...
Sure. How many employees?
We have 120 FTEs average.
So when you started out...
There was 5 of us.
Right. So did you ever expect it to be this big?
I never did, but I don't think that we're done growing either. I think that there's so many opportunities in the world right now, and because children everywhere are the same. This is what I find from working in China and from working overseas. They're the same folks as we are, and we really need to accentuate that. We need to go ahead, and I find that our project works very well as cultural diplomacy, because it's not Americans going and just presenting to their culture and saying, look at what we can do. It's we do it with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, look at what we can do together.
Sure.
You need a special kind of person to put in the red bus, right?
Oh, man.
Because you have an actor, but you have to have like community organizer and a stage. I mean, how do you find your staff that engage in that activity?
We search the entire country. To tell you the truth, we look at about 5,000 auditions a year.
Wow.
We go to SCTCs, that's Southeastern Theater Conference. We go to UPTAs, the United Professional Theater Association. We go to all of these big auditions, watch 90 seconds of their talent, but we don't base it just on talent. We can't, right?
No.
Just like you were saying, we need an individual that is completely above reproach. We need somebody that is passionate about this kind of work.
Yeah.
And we need somebody that has people skills so they can talk to the superintendent, but they can also deal with a 5-year-old.
Do you do background checks?
Oh, absolutely.
You must.
Fingerprinting, background
Yeah,
check.
yes.
I was going to say, do you...
Well, they're interfacing with 65,000 children.
you have
amazing.
to. I'm blown away by how much goes on here. And is there a version of MCT for adults like that is similar to MCT?
Well,
Funny you should mention that.
we have a fairly new program, which I think maybe intersects with your question. We have something called the Intergenerational Project. It uses the same scripts, but we will deal with maybe a retirement home.
Okay.
And we'll go into a retirement home and cast the play with them and their grandchildren.
Oh.
And so it's the full generational picture.
That's very cool.
I tell you what, it is the coolest thing you'll ever see.
That's amazing, actually. The theater really brings community together. Arnie, you need to know this. My parents met working on a play at the Jewish at the synagogue.
What, a Yiddish play?
At the synagogue in Woodbridge, New Jersey. That's where they met.
They were in Yiddish theater?
It wasn't. I don't even know if it was Yiddish theater. I just know that they were doing. It was just. Well, first of all, that's how they got together. That's how
because your dad was a musician.
My dad was a musician,
among other things.
But that's where they met, and they always tell us that. And now it just struck me as we're sitting talking about the intergenerational thing.
Right. Yeah, because you get all this. Well, that's what our community theater does.
How great is it?
A lot. Right? The community theater where everybody is working together towards a common goal. How many things are there in the world right now that people come together as community in order to make a goal happen?
Well,
Not as many as there used to be.
Almost all of the endeavors that young people are engaged in now are electronically oriented, and this is visceral involvement, and it's missing in most people's lives.
Right.
And so that's what's very exciting about keeping up the tradition of this. It's it's high touch as opposed to what most kids are spending their time doing.
Are you, Michael, funding, right? Because you can't do this by yourself, obviously, as one just by fees that I would imagine presenters pay. Is there federal funding?
Yes,
and
the NEA does support us, and we do. But we are
self-sustaining.
Right now, about 90% earned income, which is incredible for an arts organization.
Absolutely.
That is incredible. Are you concerned any with our current state of affairs in Washington that NEA funding is going to be decreasing? Or
I have a lot of confidence in it. I'm in contact with our senators and things like that, and they reassure me in those kinds of areas. I did go to Capitol Hill last year and spoke just for the NEA to a room full of senators and the National Council for the Arts and stuff to tell our story about this. This is the side of the arts that's taking the resources where they're needed, right? I always feel like the cities have pools and pools of assets that would go into if a kid wants to be in a show or if they want to go to learn how to play a trumpet or whatever they want to do. It's there. They can do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of these smaller places and these out-of-the-way places, they either have to go to the city or kind of maybe not have any access.
What kind of relationship do you maintain with the University of Montana's theater arts?
Oh, they're
department?
big friends. They're wonderful friends. And we go way back. And we actually, every other year, we co-produce an opera with the music department, for instance. And we share resources. It's very nice to have the university across the bridge.
Tell our listeners, because most of them have driven by, and hopefully a lot of them have been inside, about the theater you have in Missoula and the genesis of developing your physical facility.
Well, we got to the point after converting a couple of warehouses into theaters. I don't know if you remember the Front Street Theater, which was down there on Front Street where the Trails Head is now. We decided if we were going to grow at all anymore, we really needed a facility to do that. And with the help of the city and a lot of Missoulians, we had been eyeing Central School for years. And as it turned out, we were able to have a fundraising drive and also just basically a lot of help with volunteerism and things. And we were able to acquire that and then build our theater onto that. Now, it's funny. It's not funny, but this is the 20th year from that build. So we inaugurated that theater on October 17th of 98.
It's a terrific facility. I mean, it's still
it's state of the art, actually.
Now.
Right. It uses all computerized fly systems. It uses
that is amazing.
State of the art lighting, digital board, soundboard, and that's from the support of our community.
And even though you're an international organization, the board of directors are all local people, right, from Missoula?
Right now, they're all local. We from time to time will have somebody that's in a special niche for us. One of our board of director was a major general in the Air Force, for instance, a couple of years ago, and that was a lot of insight came from that.
Sure, and you did some military productions, right? You were doing some things on military bases.
We actually go to almost most of the military bases for the Air Force and the Navy in the world that have dependents on them. Okay, some Army also and stuff, but that's an important aspect of what we do because those kids are uprooted every couple of years normally to go somewhere else. Well, if MCT came to their base in Turkey, and then they get uprooted and sent to UK, and MCT comes again, they go, hey, I know this, and then they can get in there and they make new friends.
Familiarity.
New friends, and those families that come to that, right, they go, can we carpool? And they start to make friends because it's the entire family that got uprooted,
You mentioned Barrow, Alaska, but tell our listeners some of the other more, obscure places where you have gone in and done productions.
Well, Beijing, right? We do quite a few things. I've done shows in London and La Paz, Bolivia.
Wow.
So we really are a super international thing, and we want to build these relationships with other places, like the Beijing thing. That's the China National Theater for Children. Very good friends of ours as far as that is the national theater for children in China. And there's a lot of children in China.
Yeah. Yes, there are.
Let's do a quick ID. Our guest is Michael McGill. He's the executive director of MCT, Missoula Children's Theater, Missoula Community Theater.
It just works
Hamilton.
out that the MCT fits both, isn't that?
It works nicely.
Nice? Yes.
Arnie.
So I wanted to focus more. You started out with 5 people. Now you have a large organization. It's a business.
Right.
Most of the people that get involved in this aren't getting involved like you because you wanted to run a business. You wanted to be in theater and you had music and and performing background. So what has it taken to build this as a business? Because it's a complicated one. You have people all over the country traveling around. You have insurance issues. You have vehicle maintenance issues. You got all kinds of stuff that's really not directly related to performing. So how did that all fit together, and is it working okay?
You had to bring that up.
Yes, I did. I did.
No, it is so complicated. I tell you, if you ever have a chance, I'd love to show you guys our board where we figure out where are these people going to go and how far is it from this town to that town and what part of the country are we in, and it's just like, and which truck and which tech are they using, which show was there last year, and it's just an amazing matrix of things.
It seems like almost overwhelming, and obviously with that many people, you always, there's human resource issues and people, leaving and people getting sick on, what happens when somebody gets sick on the road? You fly somebody else in?
And we have to.
Yes, I imagine it has happened one or a few times before. Let me ask you a question, Michael. Behind every great executive director and leader you have a great team, I would imagine.
No, I have a way better team than I am an executive director.
That's the way it's supposed to work, right?
Who are some of the key players on your management team, I would say?
Oh, okay, great. That's a good question. Joe Martinez is our artistic director, and he really he puts a lot of effort forward into making sure the quality is there for the teams and for their training. Amy Ellis is also, she's in charge of the tour personnel, making sure that those personnel are well trained and keeps constant contact with them to make sure that they're getting the job done in the right way. And Jonna Michelson is also she's books and does a bunch of the local marketing and the international work. Terry Elander is also on that group. She does the overseas bookings and things like that. It's actually Kathy Ropp, who's our finance director. Is just so many people that are such a solid core to this organization. When I hire people for the road, for instance, I say if you're an actor that really just wants to go to New York and play Hamlet,
right,
go do that. Don't do this if that's what you want to do. I said, you need to work for this organization because you believe in what we do, and you believe that it makes a difference.
Do you have to pay your actors union scale?
No, they're not union.
They're not union. Related question: is there anyone that's passed through an MCT production in a market that has gone on to become
famous?
Well, do it as a profession.
Yeah,
famous it's all relative.
Yeah, right. It's all relevant. Right? No, I think a great deal of them have gone on to have careers in theater in New York or in California or wherever like that. Lots of them, but lots of them have changed their minds and gone into education.
That's
because they found working with those young people and their influence on those young people was really an important and valued direction for their lives.
Do you make any special effort to serve minority communities or underserved, disadvantaged communities?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, we do as much as we can. Sometimes, maybe there will be a wildfire in some area or something, and we have sent in a team to after that's over to say, here, let's kind of draw the community together. It gives an excuse for the community to assemble and celebrate.
Right.
and they probably really need that at that
Also,
point.
also in the Native American community
Oh,
performances.
Sure, yeah.
So you're ubiquitous. You're everywhere.
as much as we can be.
Did you ever think that when you joined this organization that you'd be able to accomplish what you've done in the last years and seen the places you've seen?
No. I don't think I went into it thinking that. I was really looking small picture.
Uh-huh.
You know, after I did my first week in Belfouche, South Dakota, and I found myself feeling like, wow, that was special. That was not what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be this high-end performer or something like that, and that's really not what it ended up being. But I've been honored to do what I do.
Who do you answer to? Like, is it the state or is it the
Board
city?
of Directors.
So the board of directors got it. Okay. And
the current president was Sid Graff.
is,
I know Sid. Sid's a great
guy. Yeah.
it is an incredible thing. It's actually, you've been able to impact more people, per se, doing what you do now than maybe had you gone on to be a performer.
Right. I was being interviewed one time by not a local guy, but he came in and he said, so if this organization is so great and, what you're accomplishing here, because I write most of the scripts and scores and things like that, so I get to create still. But he said, why didn't you go to New York? And I said, well, with 65,000 kids saying the words I wrote and singing the songs I wrote and presenting in front of all of these hundreds of thousands of people, show me a way to affect more people or to be out there more.
Sure.
There isn't.
What are some of the themes of the production, the writing that you've done? Like, what are you presenting right now?
Well, a good example might be the one I just wrote last year, which is Hercules. I always find, like, if I have a title like that, okay, it's a good title because marketing wants a good, strong title.
Yeah, Hercules.
Right? A strong title. Hercules.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about that, I was going, all right, it's about a hero, a superhero. Who do I know that's a superhero? And I found myself thinking, it doesn't have anything to do with physical strength, does it? It has to do with the person that steps up and does what needs to be done. And I thought that's what the theme of my Hercules is going to be.
Wow. Do you ever present a production like a Hello Dolly, or not an Hello Dolly? That's a bad example. Or an Annie.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So you'll buy productions?
Oh, no, we just for Missoula.
Just for Missoula.
Not on the road.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
Like this year, we're doing Sister Act as the first show. And
okay.
And then Elf. Right, which
Will
is the
Ferrell.
movie.
I know him. I know Santa.
You know?
That was a funny movie.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you this: you're working with children. There's got to be a lot of funny stories about dealing with kids in theater. I mean, I can just imagine what that would be like. Is there a story you could share with us?
Oh sure. I remember one time when I was on the road, especially.
Yes.
These things where it's just you and your partner, and
right.
Well, and the presenter. They're around to help, but show day, right? For Johnny Appleseed, and we're putting on makeup, making sure all the costumes are right and not wrinkled and all that kind of stuff. And we're putting on makeup, and I noticed that our leading lady was not there. And I kind of asked. The room was pretty noisy, and I asked kind of out loud to the general group. I said, "Does anybody know where Sheila is?" I still remember her name, and the room got absolutely silent. As it turns out, Sheila went to the basketball game in the next town. So my partner kind of went out in the hall, found somebody that would fit the costume, and spent about a half an hour working with them, and some stuff like had a book with some of the lines on it and stuff like that. And we pulled off the show anyway, even though
the lead was gone.
Mm-hmm.
The show must go on.
The show must go on.
It's got to. You can't let down all those other kids.
No, absolutely.
Do they have a wrap party afterwards, like a cast party after?
That's not our deal. That would be the presenter.
The presenter would do that.
Mm-hmm.
There is a guy. First of all, our guest is Michael McGill, executive director of MCT, Missoula Children's Theater, Missoula Community Theater. There's a guy that I worked with back in New York City, and he actually studied Tai Chi with me, and my instructor, his name is Freddie Gershon. He is the head of something called MTI.
Right,
you know
sure.
MTI.
You bet, yeah.
So Freddie I think when I don't know when he started doing this, but he started to work on a whole program and platform to bring focus on children, to bring productions to for children to different communities. And I'm just curious if that introduction might be him. I would have liked him to meet you actually.
Oh, sure.
Because God, that's where things meet.
That's the way it works.
It's true networking.
We actually did some work with MTI when they were trying to convert Aladdin to that junior kind of a show. It was only before that. It was only used at it was the cartoon, and it was used at the theme parks. But they wanted something that would work with kids, with children as the players.
For our audience, tell us what MTI does, because
Well, Music Theater International
Right.
is basically an organization that rents different shows to different folks.
Right.
That for a price you can do Annie, or you can do what I don't know what their shows are specifically off the top of my head. But so they also provide support materials, like you can get the whole score on some kind of a CD or something like that, so you can do your work off of that. But they're a huge resource for materials, especially I think they're doing all of the Disney things now too. They control those properties. So we work a lot with MTI.
Very powerful and run out of a little office.
Right. Have you had to update your scripts to be politically correct in the 21st in the first quarter of the 21st century?
Sure.
Because I realized I was the other day in the shower humming a theater song, from one of the shows, and I realized that the lyrics you could not, use. My little girl, half again as bright as girls were meant to be.
Right.
You couldn't say that on the stage anymore.
Carousel.
Yeah, from Carousel. That is completely, antiquated. You have to do that.
I have to be real careful about that. I have to be careful when I'm writing the new ones, and I have to be really careful about looking at the scripts that are 20 years old now. Just go, well, that's not going to work anymore, so let's rewrite that. We do a rewrite every little bit.
Even people who are a little bit out of touch with performing, I just saw that Jerry Seinfeld got slammed for his, Comedians in Cars with Coffee, because he was doing some old shtick, and it just didn't resonate anymore.
Isn't that amazing?
He was telling some jokes about how Harvey Weinstein that fell completely flat. It was sort of tone deaf, and obviously a script like she's twice as smart as girls are meant to be is pretty dated.
But that's I'm with you on that, and it's when you look at Jerry Seinfeld, I don't know exactly what he did, but that's what comedians exist for, is to reflect back what society is
changing quicker
presenting.
than he was. He's 60 years old now, and some of the stuff he's spewing out there on the spot is 20 years old.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something else. The inevitable question: stage parents. How do you deal with them? They want their kids cast. They want that someone doesn't get cast. Do some of them hang around or try to hang around while you're working with their children?
Oh, well, we don't keep them out. I mean, if we have open rehearsals, and we think that's just fine, right? And I think that the parents are actually so involved with these kids. That's great. That's a great part of this, because it's something they do with their kids. They're going to drop them off to the rehearsal.
Right.
They might as well stay and watch if they want to. Sometimes the sponsor goes, no, we don't want this place full of other people and things like that, so they might make a different rule. But as far as we're concerned, well, sure, there's
occasionally there's a Tanya Harding mother that's around.
But I really honestly think that we see the best of them. We really
that's really good.
Is there a waiting for Guffman aspect to any of these things, where there's someone like, we've invited so and so to see little Johnny perform?
Oh, that doesn't come to mind too much, but I imagine that happens. But it doesn't come to my.
Yeah, I love waiting for Guffman.
It is funny.
That's very funny.
Michael, in our remaining minutes, what can the community do to better support you, right? Or I'm sure you're getting great support, but what else could you use?
Yes. Well, like I have said already, Missoula has been just an amazing place to run a company, because it is so supportive in time and in treasure. We work really hard in order to make the things that we do available to other communities. We really do our best to keep our overhead as low as we can so that that doesn't get passed on to those towns.
Sure.
Because it basically goes against what we're trying to do if it becomes an elitist thing because it's so expensive.
What's the typical is there a typical ticket price in
well, we don't collect the tickets.
Right,
so
no, but basically from what you've seen, what are they usually?
I don't know.
$10.
Sometimes what they do in a community is they want it to be free. Sometimes they want it to be $5. Sometimes they charge $20. I don't know. You know, it's all over the place.
It's really interesting. It's one of our greatest exports. Without knowing too much about it, I mean, only reading what I did about MCT, it really is. I mean, if you think about Missoula, this little town off of I-90, it's just us. It's us, and it's Spokane, it's Seattle. I mean, think of the treasures that are here, to borrow your word. Who would know that? I mean, who would think that this amazing town exists and one of our greatest exports is theater to the rest of the world?
Thousands of kids and parents.
Thousands of kids.
If someone wants to contribute or find out more about Missoula Children's Theater or Missoula Community Theater, how do they reach out to you?
Okay. Our phone number is 728-1911. You can ask for me. I'm around. Also, Beth Frazee accepts those kind of calls in order to chat with how people can help. And obviously, I hope I made the point that we do need help. Sometimes they look at that wonderful theater that we have, and they go, they must be doing okay, and we are.
Do you have any fundraisers coming up or things? Do you do an annual fundraiser?
Yes, we have something. I'm glad you brought that up.
I figured you might.
Here, September 22nd, we're going to have a dance-a-thon. We've never had a dance-a-thon before.
Oh, that's terrific.
And I think it's going to be so fun.
Wonderful.
It's one of those things, there's fundraisers and there's friend-raisers, and I think that this is kind of both.
It's not going to end like they shoot horses, don't they?
No.
No. What's your website address for people who want to take a look at all the things that are going on? You have a really terrific website.
Yeah, you do.
It has all kinds of great stuff on it.
Thank you. It's MCTINC.org.
MCTINC.org.
That's like MCT Inc.
All right. We are speaking with Michael McGill, Executive Director of MCT. You know what that stands for.
Yes.
And we'll be back with final words right after this. Okay, we're kibitzing in the studio with Michael McGill.
Well, the organization is just a tremendous organization and does so many things. And it hits so many of the right buttons, for kids, for families, for an educational experience, a good employment experience for people who are entering, as you mentioned, to make a decision about whether they want to really be performers or they want to be educators. And, in some cases, this allows you to do both and explore both simultaneously. So it's really terrific.
I would just throw into that is those people that come off the road after doing this for a year or sometimes 2 years, they're a changed individual because they have been making decisions and making good decisions in situations that really require
they're thrown
quick
into the
thinking.
breach very quickly. I can just imagine. What happens when you're in some town you've never been in before. You're there for a week. You got to do 2 performances on Saturday. You show up on Monday. It's the middle of the winter. There's a snowstorm. I mean, it's just all the things that could potentially happen. There's a movie in this somewhere.
Do you check in with all your productions on a weekly basis? Is there like a conference call?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every one of them call in.
How we doing? It's like, hey, how's everybody doing? Michael, I asked you this during the break, but we were saying how great is the city involved, and has the community be involved? So is Mayor Engen a big supporter of this?
Oh, you bet. John has really been excellent with us, and any time that he can help, he does. And I've taken several things to the city council, and they're always so supportive. I feel very lucky to have a city council and a mayor that are so aligned with the arts. Because Missoula is crazy on the arts. I mean, a symphony orchestra for a town this size. I mean, all of the visual arts that go on here, all of the music that goes on here, it's incredible.
Right, the writers that domicile themselves in the area.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it just really is.
Michael, I thought of something as we were, you see how it impacts Missoula, right, from an economic standpoint. Talk about how theater. I mean, this is a good, thing that you brought up.
What's the economic impact of the Missoula Children's Theater on Missoula?
and theater in general.
I think the whole package, arts and culture, the impact, a recent study from about a year and a half ago says it's a $54 million impact on the Missoula economy.
Got it. Just in Missoula. And then how about nationwide?
Well, nationally, what's pretty exciting is that Missoula ended up, after an organization was looking at 900 different communities in the United States, Missoula hit number 4 of medium-sized communities.
Wow.
Number 4. We were in the top 10.
God.
And
Isn't that incredible?
that's a tribute to Mike and organizations like this.
MCT.
Yep.
How do we get in touch with you again? What's the way to what's your website address?
Website address is mctinc.org. O-R-G.
Can't wait for the dance-a-thon in September.
And that's September 22nd, and it'll be where? At the theater?
At MCT.
All right, and you know what? We'll promote that, and we'll get more information.
Put a team together to participate. Maybe you'll have a
dance-a-thon?
a Town Square Media duo here.
I want a team here.
Yeah, not you and me dancing together, but you got plenty of staff here.
We've had a few
dance-a-thon.
Yeah, we certainly have. We would love to do that. Michael, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care. See you next week, Scott.
All right, see you then, Arnie.